Virginia, right outside DC. And I have a 21-year-old daughter with a rare disease, not LHON, but it's Phelan-McDermott syndrome. I may refer to it by its initials, which happen to be PMS. I am not a go-getter like Lissa and Melinda. I did not start an organization. I did not interact with researchers. I was recruited in 2010 to help the other volunteers in our foundation create a data collection or a registry. So it was a steep learning curve. And for 10 years, I was the principal investigator. And we had what we thought was a really successful registry. We had 70% of our families in there. They answered 300 questions. But after 10 years, we looked and realized that we had not gotten many publications. And we learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And we spent a lot of money and a lot of volunteer time that could have been used in different ways. I'm no longer the PI of that. And I was recruited by RAREX to essentially work with patient organizations like I was in 2010 and save them from all of the hard lessons and expenses that our organization went through. So I'm going to go ahead and share slides. And as I said, please feel free to interrupt. Okay. The goals of your organization were to create a robust data set that would be available to all types of stakeholders for the development of treatments. Also identifying participants that could that are appropriate for studies and clinical trials, and to reduce the time of all of this. It's frightening to see how long drug development can take, and it's even worse in rare disease. And as Melinda stated, having robust data can speed up the process a lot. Promoting the development of new assistive devices. So in your community, we're not just looking at medical treatments, but devices as well. So the LHON data collection program, some organizations might call it a registry. We chose to call it a data collection program for various reasons. Is enabled by RAREX technology, but it is your community's project. We don't own it. All the governance and the support and the security is all on our shoulders, but your families should benefit through the process of getting the data out to as many researchers around the world. So who's RAREX? We are a nonprofit, and we were created out of a lot of frustration from stakeholders in the rare disease world. Industry, researchers, patient advocates. There were just so many burdens on organizations like yours to getting this type of thing up and running and maintaining it. And there was a lot of barriers for researchers, both in academia and in industry, biopharma, of getting high quality data. As I said, my organization collected a lot of data for 10 years, yet we didn't have publications. And that, in the most part, had to do is that we weren't asking the right questions. We are a platform that collects data. We'll talk about that the most tonight. We will have the ability to connect to existing data if it's somewhere else. And we are all about sharing data. And when I say sharing or disseminating data, I always mean de-identified data. You will have identified data from your surveys that you can share with whomever you wish, your doctors, your family, your schools, but the data that RAREX shares with your community, with researchers, will all be de-identified. RAREX does not own the data, nor does your community. You as participants, whoever's putting the data in, controls and manages the use of that data. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, you as the participant decide how broadly you want your data shared, and you can change those decisions. We do not sell your data, not even to pharma. So this is a level playing field. All researchers, whether they're at academia, at medical centers, at biotechs or pharmaceutical companies, will all have the same access to this data free of charge. We also do not do research with the data, but we will make sure that you have ample support that analysis is done. So this was not a quick and easy decision for your community leaders. They did not just pick us out of a hat. There was lots of due diligence and lots of other platforms that were looked at. But they chose us because not just that there's no cost to their organization or to researchers, but they understand the value of having standardized surveys. We do not come up with surveys out of the blue. We are looking at all the surveys for each system of the body, and we have outside advisors that will look at all those existing surveys and pick which will yield the most high quality data needed for researchers and accepted by regulators like FDA. This is patient owned and managed, as I said. So your leadership did not feel the need to have control over the data or have identifiers. They just wanted to be able to collect high quality data and get it in the hands of the people that need it. They were very excited that we were taking on the responsibility of the governance. And I can get into a little bit of that later. Our unique federated data access and analysis platform was a very big plus for your community because of data regulations around the world. Data is not allowed to just leave a country. And by having it federated, researchers can look into the data. This makes it allowable for more eyes on the data, which we really want. Obviously, all of this will speed up research. And eventually, the ability to connect to existing data was also something that they thought was an advantage. So for researchers, we've done the levy. We will do the heavy lifting. We will have recruited the families who are participating. We will have consented you. We have chosen the highest quality standardized surveys, and we will have collected the uploaded genetic reports and had them curated, which means a genetic counselor will take the data from your genetic report, which has identifiers, and put it into the system in a de-identified way. All of this data can be analyzed in the cloud, which researchers love. They have all these fancy statistical tools, and they can query based on disease, genetics, or symptoms. And this is really important. It means that researchers who have never heard of LHON can query on something like vision loss and could stumble across data on a disease they've never heard of and find that this is a disease they need to work in. And again, researchers love the federated data access and analysis. So what are the benefits for you? You're busy. You may have participated in other research in the past. So first and foremost, based on your data, you may be chosen to be recruited for a clinical trial or study. This doesn't mean that you have to participate in it. It just means that we will notify you of it and you can make that decision at that time. The fact that your data will be seen by researchers worldwide should be of great value to you. This isn't a one-off where only a handful of researchers may even know that the data exists. This will be in a huge data collection where researchers can access it. The ability to update your symptoms at any time. This is very important. It's why I made it blue. A lot of people think of in-person clinical, natural history studies at a clinical site as what should be, that's gold standard. Well, that's great if you can make it to the site, and it's great if the funding for that particular study is ongoing. Often the funding is limited, or people are too far away, or can't get there. My own daughter is in a study at the NIH, and to this point, recently, last month, she was seen. She was very ill at the time, and that's the data they got on her. 2 weeks later, her neurologist changed her medications. She has improved vastly, and I will not be able to report that data, or she will not be able to report that data until her next visit in 11 months. So being able to update your symptoms is really important. We will remind everybody to update at least once a year. If there are no symptoms or there have been no changes, that's equally of interest and importance to researchers. So we will remind you, even if there has not been changes. You should be excited about the ability to manage the use of your data. Some may want to share very broadly. Some may want some limitations on how their data is shared. I think you all are on this call because you're interested in having research and drug development happening and happening faster, and able to receive updates on what's going on. So who can enroll? Anyone affected by LHON vision loss, and anyone who's known or presumed to have had LHON mutations, or even if no vision loss, commonly referred to as LHON carriers or unaffected carriers. This includes a parent of another generation that may have already passed away. There's actually a role that I'll point out later that you can say you are a loved one of someone that has passed. So even before this was labeled LHON, if you know that somebody in your family had it or was a carrier, then you can go ahead and enroll them. Anyone with a diagnosis of LHON plus, and as I said, anyone who is deceased. Because this is maternally inherited, the health issues of the deceased maternal bloodline family members with or without LHON will be informative. I want to stress what Melinda said before. Carriers are, you should enroll as, quote, a patient, even if you're considered unaffected. What a lot of disease have discovered over time is that unaffected carriers are affected. They're just affected in different ways. And this is a really good way for us to be able to parse that out. So the journey for the patient would be for you to get a link to your front door, your community page through the LHON website or through the link that will be shared on your social media. I'll show you what that community page will look like. From there, you will go to a terms of use. It will say Matrix because we are sitting on the technology of a company called Matrix. Then you'll enroll. There'll be double validation like you're used to, where a code will be sent to your email and then you'll go back and enter it. You know the drill. Then you'll go through the patient consent and the data sharing, where you decide how you want your data shared, and then off to the races in the surveys. So I want to highlight this. I keep saying more eyes on research, more researchers will see this data. Traditionally, on the left side of this screen, there is a researcher who has to know your disease exists and know that you have data, and then go to your foundation and say, I would like data, or I would like to recruit your families for surveys. This is a one-off. It's great. Somebody wants to do research, and that's great. But the foundation is jumping through all sorts of hoops, and the researchers are jumping through all sorts of hoops to get a set of data on one disease. It's time consuming for both parties, and it has to be repeated over and over again. On the right side of the screen is RAREX. This is a novel and forward-thinking approach where all the diseases, there's over 10,000 rare diseases, are able to go in and enter data into RAREX. And everybody with a specific symptom, for instance, my daughter has epilepsy. No matter what disease somebody has, if they have epilepsy, they will see the same questions that I will see for my daughter, which allows for what's called across disease research, which is very exciting. On the far right of this slide are the researchers. Instead of knocking on different doors of diseases they know about, they're going through one door. They give their credentials and they set up an account, and then they can query. And again, this is where they may stumble across data on a disease they haven't heard of. As a parent of somebody with a rare disease, that's incredibly exciting to me. So what do you need? You need your email address. You'll need to create a password. We do tell you to use Google Chrome or Apple Safari version 14 or higher, if you know what version you have. We do not recommend Microsoft Edge. Internet Explorer is no longer in existence as of a few weeks ago, or Mozilla. You do not need a lot of time. You can stop at any point. It will save your work and you can go back to it. So you really don't have to finish it all at once. This is the community page, or what I said was the front door. It has instructions, it has reasons that you may want to get involved, it has frequently asked questions, and it has a translate button. Once you hit this red button that says get started, unfortunately, you will be in English only for now, but we do have plans to add 5 translations in the next calendar year. And we will continue to add translations, as this has to be a global effort. We have to find the patients all over the world. The studies are happening all over the world, and the clinical trials could be happening all over the world. So this is not going to remain in English only. Prior to getting to the informed consent, there's a few questions you have to answer. On this page, you have to provide your information. If you are a carrier and you have a minor child, then you are also a caregiver, and you would enroll as a caregiver first. Then you will enroll yourself as a patient, and then you will enroll, add any other family members. Where it says email here, if you happen to have participated in the registry called MitoShare, and we would ask that you use a different email here. There will be efforts to collaborate and share those data across these collections, but for technology programming issue, this has to be a unique email. You need to check all that apply. This question is, I'm at least 18 years of age. You have to check that in order to get to the next step. And then you either acknowledge that you're in the United States, or that you're outside and that you understand that your data will be transmitted to the United States. This is a data regulation question. These arrows on the left are showing you that you can be in several roles. You can be in 1, 2, or all 3 of these roles. You are a patient if you are affected or an unaffected carrier. You are a caregiver if you are have a minor child that is affected or unaffected. And you are the person who has lost a loved one if you know that you had a parent that was a carrier. You'll go through the informed consent. You've gone through lots of them. I encourage you to actually read it and not go to the last, to this page to say accept. We want to make sure that you feel very comfortable with where your data is and know how secure it is. Again, this second to last page of the informed consent is going to ask you to click all that apply. It's the same options as before. So after you get through the informed consent, this is the data sharing preference. The first few questions are where you decide how broadly you want to share your data. This first page, you have 2 choices. You have to pick one, and it's either general research, which is I want to share my data with all researchers doing any type of research, including studies on traits, socioeconomics, and so on. The second option is I want to share my data with researchers that are only doing health, medical, and biomedical research. It is your prerogative. I chose general research because I would like as many eyes on this as possible, but this is your choice. This next page, you do not need to check any boxes. This is going to limit your data sharing more. The first says that you will share your data with researchers except biopharma. So you will only share with non-commercial purposes. I did not choose that box because I would like biopharma to have my daughter's data. The second question says you only want to share your data with researchers that have gone through an institutional review process. That means that their institution, their university ethics committee has reviewed their study and given it their stamp of approval. Again, your prerogative. I did not choose either on this page. The rest of the questions in the data sharing preference are for the future. They're to help us inform your community leaders about what you have shared in the past and what you would be willing to share in the future. This question is that you're willing to share your contact information. That means your name and your email, not your medical information, not your genetic information, just your contact information with the leadership, which based on your relationships with Lisa and the fact that she knows where everybody lives, I think that you probably have already shared that information. But I highly recommend that when you're going through this with the people in your cohort, that they understand that this is so that they can stay informed. The second question is that you are willing to have your de-identified data shared in an aggregate way. So your organization leadership will have access to aggregate data like charts that says what percentage of the people that answered this question that have LHON answered yes or no, or had this symptom or that. I cannot imagine why you would say no to this. If you say no, that means your data is not included in any of the charts. The rest of the questions in the data sharing preference will be, would you be willing to have your data shared, your medical records data connected someday? Have you shared your biosamples? Would you be willing to have biosamples? So it's really more to inform future decisions. So now we're at the exciting part. This is the dashboard. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a name, Sylvie Youngston. Under it, it says patient. If you have multiple roles and you're like me and you get easily distracted, you may come back and say, I don't know whose survey I was answering. Was I on my questions or was I on my child's questions? You can always look to the left-hand corner to understand that. After you get through the consent and the data sharing, the next most important thing is the health and development survey. I have nicknamed the head to toe survey because it has one question about every system in the body, from the head to the toe: eyes and vision, ears and hearing, heart and blood and lung, and so forth. Once you answer that, then several more surveys will be added to your dashboard based on things that you said yes to. If you say no, I don't have growth issues, then you're not going to get a growth survey. The times that they have given here to complete each is, I have found that you can do it faster, but that's the time that they've given. And for every survey, it says up here, new or in progress, and then completed. Even if you've completed a survey, if things change, remember I said it's important to go back and update your symptoms. You just change the answers. So here is an example of questions in the health and development survey. Have you had issues with your eyes and or vision? It's very broad. Yes, no, or unsure. If you say yes, then you will get a level 2 survey. If you say unsure to something like cardiac issues, if you're not sure if you do or you don't, and you say unsure, you will also get that cardiac survey. Toward the end of the health and development survey, you're going to be asked if you had genetic testing, what your reason for it was, which it's going to be multiple reasons, check all that apply. And if you have your genetic report, then you will upload it. If you don't have your genetic report, if the people that you meet with on a regular basis don't know where their genetic report is, this is a good homework assignment or project. I hate to fill Lissa's email box, but if you don't have your genetic report or don't know where to look for it, Lissa might be able to point you in the right direction. So in order to upload that genetic report, when you finish your surveys, you can go to documents and you can hit upload. There is a place where you can tag genetic report, but you can also not use a tag and upload other reports. This is a good storage spot for reports so that next time you need it, you can say, oh, I don't know where it is, but I know I uploaded it to the LHON data collection. So you can upload the OCTs and the vision field tests if you want to. You'll see the red box on the bottom of the dashboard. This is where the level 2 surveys will appear. And again, if you had said no to something in the health and development, and then a year later you go back and you change your answer to yes, then that second level will then appear in your dashboard. So level 2, still pretty general. These questions are eye movement issues, visual impairment, and different in eye size. This is only half of them, but it's not an exhaustive list. If you say yes, then you get a drop down for age symptom appeared and age of diagnosis. Sometimes that's going to be the same time, and sometimes there may be months or years of a gap. And that's important for us to understand. Here are the remaining questions. You'll see towards the end, there is an optic nerve issue. You would say yes to this if you have optic neuropathy. At the very bottom of every level 2 survey is a add issues. So if there's something that you weren't asked, you want to report it. I mean, I personally want to be able to complain about everything that affects my quality of life. And if somebody doesn't ask me in a survey, I feel cheated. We don't want you to feel cheated. You can just hit yes and type in whatever that is. There is a quality of life survey. I want you to note that it says in the past 7 days. This may not seem terribly relevant to your community. For some diseases, it's a much bigger deal. And for FDA, knowing what the quality of life before and after a device or drug can be very important. So that's why this is included. All surveys are optional, but we want you to complete as many surveys as you can, as soon as you can. And within surveys, all questions are required, but you always have an out. You can say unsure. On some surveys, you can say prefer not to answer. For this survey, in my daughter's case, I had to answer unable to answer because of my child's condition, because she's nonverbal and I don't know some of the answers. So when you enroll first, if you are a caregiver, if you are a carrier or affected and you have a minor child, then you are a caregiver. Enroll yourself first as a caregiver and then go back and add patient. The Caregiver Dashboard will only have a few surveys, but the patient dashboard, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, there's this little book with a plus sign. That's how you get to their dashboard. On the left, you'll see dashboards. Again, this is Brittany Lane, the caregiver's dashboard. So you can always check to see where that is. This is a larger version of it. Okay. We emphasize that if you are a carrier and you know that your parent was a carrier, that you can enroll as a person who has lost a loved one. When you're entering their demographic information, it's the typical race, ethnicity, gender, birthplace, estimated household income. By the way, that's a socioeconomic research question. It's not so we can hit you up for money. There is the patient alive? You want to say no, and then you're going to get a box that we're working on changing the content for, but I want to just go ahead and explain it to you. It says, are you sure? Because you may be permanently removed from surveys. The answer here is yes, you're sure, because that's what you have to say to get to the next survey, which is called the loss survey. That will ask about the person's cause of death, which is likely unrelated to LHON, when they died, and a few other questions. That survey will then say, would you like to answer more surveys? And if you say yes, then you will go through the whole process. The only thing that's different about this is you do not have to consent for someone who is deceased. So here's some tips. If you feel like there isn't a next button or continue button, look for another scroll bar on the right side. We've said this before, but I'll say it for a 5th time. Whether you're affected or unaffected or plus, you should enroll as patient. If you only enrolled as a caregiver, you will not have access to all of those other surveys. If you have an adult child, they have to enroll themselves. We've already talked about enrolling someone who is deceased or multiple people, and about using a different email. I want to emphasize something here. With the health and development survey, head to toe, don't second guess yourself. If you have a dermatological issue because you inherited it from your dad and it has nothing to do with LHON, it's still important. You're reporting on your whole health, not just what's related to LHON. So don't second guess yourself. If the genetic report is available, please upload it in that document section. And we had a few things that came up that we were like, oh, so if you do experience migraines, you're going to say yes in that health and development survey to brain and or nervous system. Also, the topic of central auditory processing, you'll need to say yes to ears and hearing. So if you have any issues, if you don't like a question, if you had a hard time with your browser, if you think that you're getting too many reminders, it doesn't matter what it is. Please contact support@rarex.org and Melinda, LHON, @yahoo.com. That way we can make a change and Melinda can make sure that we make those changes. So it's really helpful if you contact both.